Chapter 932. I will act as a lone wolf. No matter what Zhang Yi said, Lei was unwilling to change his name. Although dogs have lower IQs than humans, their loyalty is unmatched by humans. Zhou Lingling is its owner, so Zhou Lingling calls it Lei, and he only recognizes this name. Even though Zhang Yi is very powerful and makes it afraid, the basic principles cannot be abandoned. Zhang Yi smiled and rubbed its big head with his feet. This thing is really big, and the key is that it can't be transformed like Hua. So on weekdays, it is just that big in the room like an oversized black plush toy, and it has its own insulation function. To be honest, it's also quite fun. At this time, Zhang Yi's satellite phone rang. Zhang Yi picked it up and saw that it was a video call from Zhu Zheng. A playful look flashed in his eyes. Now a week has passed, and his superpowers have fully recovered. Zhu Zheng's purpose of looking for him is naturally for Xingdao's God Source operation. Zhang Yi knew that the East China Sea region had wasted too much time in the wrong place, and later it slowly came to its senses. But it is obvious that it would be extremely difficult for them to take it all for themselves, because no one is sure about the movements of the Columbia Navy. Zhang Yi answered the phone, and the video showed Zhu Zheng's face, which was always kind to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi, how have you been resting recently? Are you feeling better? Are there any sequelae or something? Zhang Yi said lightly, I think there are. I always feel weak all over these days. I can't get motivated to do anything. I just want to lie down at home. When Zhu Zheng heard this, he knew that Zhang Yi was fine. He smiled and said, Since you have recovered, hurry up and go to Blizzard City. I'm waiting for you now. The captain of the investigation team in Blizzard City has returned, just waiting for Zhang Yi to go back, hold a combat meeting, and then decide on the next step. Hearing the 4 words, combat meeting, Zhang Yi sneezed suddenly for some reason, and felt a chill on his back. He frowned and asked, Didn't the East China Sea region succeed? It's too late for us to set off now. And without the assistance of the East China Sea region, we can't break through the blockade of the Colombian Navy. Zhu Zheng said with a smile, This time, God is helping us. Most areas of Star Island, especially the surrounding areas of the Fog Valley, are shrouded in huge fog that appeared inexplicably. The coverage area exceeds 6 cities and more than 20,000 square kilometers. Most of the country is shrouded in fog. This kind of fog cannot be penetrated and detected by satellites, and it is very toxic. If you want to explore it, you can only use primitive means. Therefore, the East China Sea region has not found a good method in a short time. Now they are asking for trouble. Not only have they wasted time there, but they have also attracted the attention of the Colombian Navy because of the noise they made. So this time, they took the initiative to come to us for cooperation to form a joint armed force to enter Star Island to find the source of God. Zhang Yi was not surprised at all to hear the news. The Fog Valley is a dangerous area that is shrouded in miasma all year round. Now that we have the source of God, it is not surprising that there are any changes. But cooperating with the East China Sea region? Zhang Yi sneered, his face full of disdain, and a hint of disgust flashed in the depths of his eyes. Zhu Zheng knew that Zhang Yi was still resentful of the East China Sea region's impolite behavior towards him. He quickly comforted him. Zhang Yi, this is a critical moment. I know that the East China Sea region has done something very offensive to you. But right now, cooperating with them is our best choice. If you really want to vent this anger, the only way is to make yourself stronger. Believe me, mountains and rivers will meet each other. When you are strong enough, sooner or later, they will ask you for help. At that time, it will be your chance to take revenge. Not now, because we are indeed not as strong as them. Zhang Yi was silent for a moment and sighed. I understand. I will rush to Blizzard City immediately and follow the arrangements of the headquarters. Zhu Zheng nodded with satisfaction. That's right. When you go out, you have to give yourself face. It's meaningless to be sulky. After the two ended the call, the angry and unwilling expression on Zhang Yi's face disappeared immediately. East China Sea region? This time I have plenty of time to have fun with you. He looked at Hua on the sofa and Lei on the carpet and raised his eyebrows. It's time for us to leave. Zhang Yi said goodbye to the people at home. This time, he didn't bring anyone with him, but brought a cat and a dog. But no one at home raised any objections. Lu Karen brought equipment to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi carefully checked it all over the brand new combat uniform, and no detail was missed. This combat uniform is a bit underestimated to describe it as armed to the teeth, and it can even be said that it is armed to every thread. It's time to go. Zhang Yi said goodbye to everyone at home and got in the car with only Huahua. As for Lele, due to his large size, he could only run beside him. There is no problem for it, as it runs in the snow as fast as the wind. Watching Zhang Yi go away, everyone in the family had different expressions in their eyes. Liang Yu's eyes were a little lonely, but she soon felt relieved. Zhang Yi didn't take her with him. Of course, he had his considerations. Moreover, the task of fighting for the source of God this time was of great importance. I'm afraid that the captain-level figures would be dispatched on a large scale. Even if she went with him, she would have to take great risks. She was like this, let alone others. Yang Xinxin's eyes showed a touch of excitement that was almost crazy. This time, brother, you should give them some surprises. Zhang Yi brought Huahua and Lele to the Jiangnan district. Without time to rest, Bailey Chongqing came to greet him as soon as possible. After all, Zhang Yi is now nominally the captain of the Tengu team, and Bailey Chongqing and others are his subordinates. Captain, you're here. Zhu Shuai asked you to go to the Combat Command Center and said that as soon as you arrive, a high-level meeting will be held immediately. At that time, all the captains of the investigation teams will participate. Zhang Yi nodded. Yes, I understand. Bailey Chongqing looked around Zhang Yi in surprise and did not see the shadows of Liang Yu, Yang Xinxin, Zhou Qier, and others. He only saw a big dog and a black tabby cat lying on its head. You didn't bring anyone with you this time? Bailey Chongqing asked curiously. Zhang Yi said lightly, there is no point in bringing more people for this mission. The headquarters can send more people over. Because the search for the source of God requires a large number of manpower, in the most primitive way. But Zhang Yi will not let the people around him take risks. Chapter 933. Operation Star Island Operation Meeting. Bailey Chongqing didn't ask too much. He didn't know about the source of God. But judging from the current situation in Blizzard City, something big is going to happen. You know, even when the eclipse moon caused headaches for the Jiangnan region, there was no such large-scale recall of all investigation teams. Bailey Chongqing drove Zhang Yi to the Combat Command Center. When he entered the hall, he passed by a man in a thick military coat. The two of them looked at each other at the same time. The man was wearing a white mask on his face, and his true face could not be seen clearly. His slender body was completely covered by the dark brown military coat. Zhang Yi smelled an extremely strong bloody smell from him. Bailey Chongqing hurried over and said, Captain, he is the captain of the Iron Blood Squad, Lilong. Bailey Chongqing looked at the man with a fearful expression, as if he didn't want to get too close to him. However, Lilong heard the conversation between the two, and seemed to realize who Zhang Yi was. He touched his hat with his hand and nodded to Zhang Yi. You are the captain of the Tengu team, Chaos? I've heard a lot about you. The voice was hoarse, as if it came from a rusty paint bucket. Zhang Yi nodded. Mr. Lilong, nice to meet you. Before the two had time to talk more, a black-haired beauty in a professional suit came over and said with a smile, Captain Chaos, Captain Lilong, everyone else is here. Please come to the conference room. Zhang Yi nodded and followed the black-haired beauty. Bailey Chongqing was only the deputy captain and was not qualified to attend this high-level meeting, so he stayed downstairs and waited. But when passing by the front desk, Zhang Yi heard a familiar voice, as if arguing with someone. He couldn't help but look over there. It turned out to be an officer who was applying for activity funds, but for some reason he seemed to have an argument with the clerk in charge. We are all working for the region. Do you have to make things so difficult for us? We risk our lives every day when we go on missions, but you are here and refuse to let me pass because of a few typos. You are really too much. I will report you to the higher-ups. But the woman in the gray uniform and with a strange look on her face showed a weird smile. She tilted her head. If you want to sue me, Sue me. You don't think I will be afraid, do you? I am more shameless than you think. What a funny person. Zhang Yi was slightly stunned. He didn't expect that Zhu Yong would now run to the command center and become a front desk clerk. But looking at her appearance, people always doubt her mental state. If Zhang Yi didn't understand that she fell into the hands of the pirates and suffered severe torture, he would even think that Zhu Yong was sucked. Zhu Yong in this state obviously no longer meets Zhu Zheng's standard for cultivating confidence. Thrown into this position, she is probably abandoned. And now, she can only make things difficult for others. After all, as a relative of the leader, others can't take her too seriously. Finally, Zhang Yi saw the officer of Yenyun Guard leave angrily. He shrugged. It's hard to predict what will happen in the world. Zhang Yi and Li Long took the elevator to the upper floor. After a while, they came to the conference room. Most of the people sitting here were familiar faces. Tu Yunlai, Deng Shintong, Deng Yuanbua, Zhu Zhang and others were all there. Ling Hu Feishue, like him, also appeared at the scene after the effect of compound number 3 wore off. Although there was the shame of being captured, the Jiangnan region was in need of people at the moment, so she was allowed to make meritorious contributions. However, there were 2 faces at the scene that Zhang Yi was really unfamiliar with. Sitting not far from Deng Shintong, there was a guy with white hair and a cold face, but he was not scary. Because he looked a little handsome and he looked like he was only 16 or 17 years old, he looked like a middle school student. Opposite him, there was a woman with gray hair, wearing a black battle suit, and her eyes were covered with black cloth. Zhang Yi couldn't help but wonder. One of these 2 people must be the captain of the demon team. But who is the other person? While Zhang Yi was looking at everyone, everyone was also looking at him. Today, Zhang Yi is the official number 1 powerhouse in the Jiangnan region. Although the strength of an alien cannot be absolutely linked to his ability index, Zhang Yi saved Zhu Zheng's life and forced Gao Changkong to retreat head-on, making him the most recognized number 1 master. But whether the captains present think so is hard to say. But people are afraid of fame, just like pigs are afraid of getting fat, so it is natural that Zhang Yi will be noticed. When Zhu Zheng saw Zhang Yi, he smiled and said, "Chaos and Lilong, come and sit down. We're waiting for you." Strictly speaking, this meeting was mainly to wait for Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi's position was on Zhu Zheng's left-hand side, the closest to him. After Zhang Yi sat down, Zhu Zheng first introduced him to the 2 newcomers. The handsome boy with white hair is the captain of the demon team, codenamed Tao Tai. And the mysterious woman with a black eye mask is a newly formed team, Night. The captain of the Crow Squad, her code name is Jingwei. A newly formed team? Have you discovered a new captain so soon? Zhang Yi suddenly realized that in the 5 months since he left Jiangnan district, this place has already undergone earth-shaking changes. Things and people have changed, which is normal. Zhang Yi did not dwell on this, but just asked lightly, "The meeting was held in such a hurry. Did you get any news?" Zhu Zheng nodded. Basically, everyone present already knows the situation. The operation in the East China Sea district failed, and there was friction with the Columbia Navy. The situation is not optimistic, and it is even possible that the Columbia Navy will find the source of the gods. The district has decided to join forces with the East China Sea district to find the source of the gods together. Hearing this, everyone frowned. If the Columbia Navy gets the source of the gods again, it means that they will have 2 Epsilon-level aliens. That is not good news for the entire Huashu kingdom. How did they find it? Deng Shintong asked, puzzled. The actions of the East China Sea region will not be so reckless, and it is impossible to be discovered so easily. Lan Xinqing said with some gloating, "That's hard to say. The Columbia Navy is not just for show. Who asked them to stab us in the back? They acted on their own. This is retribution." Zhu Zheng glanced at him, and Lan Xinqing immediately shut up. Zhu Zheng continued, "This time, both sides will send a group of top aliens to participate in the mission. My opinion is that since our strength is weaker than the Columbia Navy and the East China Sea region, we have to concentrate our efforts on major tasks. So, every investigation team must be dispatched." Zhang Yi had a stack of documents in front of him. all of which were various materials collected by the Jiangnan region. He flipped through them casually, and there was even some intelligence on the aliens in the East China Sea region and the Columbia Navy. Qinglong, whose real name is Su Xiaolong, was a former major in the Marine Corps. He is an orc-type ability user with unknown abilities, and is suspected to be a giant sea beast. Zhang Yi was flipping through the documents in his hand while listening to Zhu Zheng's speech. Zhang Yi actually knew all the things Zhu Zheng said. The rest were nothing more than some old-fashioned things. This time, our headquarters will send people to the mission area with the people from the East China Sea region. Which party discovers the source of God first can get 60%, and 40% goes to the other party. Hearing this, Zhang Yi asked indifferently, Zhu Shuai, can the source of God be divided? Zhu Zheng laughed. We don't know this question either. Everyone present had a strange look on their faces. They didn't even know what the source of God was. This information was too scarce. Zhu Zheng said, so in order to solve this problem, we have also come up with a solution. If the source of God really cannot be divided, then it must be paid for with corresponding resources. Deng Shintong asked back, but nothing can be more valuable than an Epsilon-level alien, right? Lan Xinqing answered for Zhu Zheng, if the quality is not enough, the quantity can make up for it. Chapter 930 for refusal to form a team. Lan Xinqing's answer made every captain smile playfully. It was a nice word, but everyone wanted to get the source of God and become a higher-level Epsilon-level alien. Tao Tai crossed his arms and said carelessly, in other words, our primary goal is to take the source of God. Then give them the corresponding supplies and be done with it. Zhu Zheng's eyes became deeper. In theory, it is indeed true. This mission is not easy to complete. As a war zone, the number and strength of top aliens in the East China Sea region are also higher than ours. So, you must be careful. If there is a chance, you can use the source of God directly. In short, whoever has the ability will use the source of God. Zhu Zheng had to say this. Because, at that time, even if he strictly forbade it, the captains would not listen to him. Zhang Yi's heart moved slightly, and he glanced at Zhu Zheng. At the beginning, Zhu Zheng promised to give him priority to use the source of God. But now, he changed his words. Zhu Zheng pretended not to see Zhang Yi's gaze. It's settled. Tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, we will set off for the East China Sea region on time. Then we will go to the mission area. You must adjust your status. You must also be prepared for a clash with the surrounding forces. Everyone nodded, without raising any more opinions. After arriving at Qingdao, everyone depends on their own abilities. In the final analysis, it depends on strength and some good luck. No one is a rookie, so there is no need to ask extra questions. And naturally, all the weapons and equipment needed for this mission are also available from the region, except Zhang Yi. The meeting ended in less than 20 minutes, clean and neat. Zhang Yi didn't say a few words from beginning to end. Because he was a participant from the beginning, he could imagine the current situation. After everyone left, he caught up with Zhu Zheng.
Zhu Shuai.
Zhu Zheng turned around and looked at Zhang Yi, his eyes not surprised at all. I knew you would come. What I promised you before may be a little difficult now. We are not the dominant party in that battlefield, so you can only fight for it by yourself. But if you need anything else, feel free to ask. Zhang Yi shook his head. He didn't come for this. He knew Zhu Zheng's difficulties, but he didn't care. I haven't thought of what you need yet. Let's talk about it when we need it in the future. But I have a request. This time I won't take Bailey Chongqing and others with me. I will go alone. Zhu Zheng and Sun Lushuan looked at Zhang Yi in surprise. You will go alone? Zhu Zheng asked, do you know that the place is very dangerous? In addition to the highly corrosive miasma, we also need to pass through the blockade of the Columbia Navy. There is a great possibility that our actions will be discovered. Although I know that your ability to save lives is very powerful. But in an area where you can't tell the direction at all, and there are miasma everywhere, it's too dangerous for one person. Zhang Yi nodded. I know all this. But it is precisely because I know this that I don't want to take anyone else with me. My abilities tend towards defensive counterattacks and assassinations. I'm happier when I act alone. Teamwork has never been my strong point. Besides, there are so many captains there, and having more people may not be a good thing. After thinking for a while, Zhu Zheng nodded. Indeed, the time you have spent with the team is too short. I can also see that you don't want to be a leader at all. In that case, just let you go. But Bailey Chongqing will be sad. Zhang Yi curled his lips slightly. He can join other teams. I believe that with his strength, he can be a deputy captain easily. Zhu Zheng put his hands behind his back and said seriously, he has not been in harmony with other teams. Even if he goes, it is very dangerous to suddenly participate in such an important operation. Zhang Yi smiled slightly. Just make your arrangements. Zhu Zheng had no choice, okay? Since you insist, then I respect your opinion. Anyway, with your strength and work style, even if you act alone, I believe you can perform well.
Zhang
Yi smiled and nodded. Thank you, Zhu Shuai. Zhang Yi went to the quartermaster alone to collect a large amount of supplies. It was nothing more than tons of heavy weapons, hundreds of tons of equivalent TNT and C for explosives, healing drugs, antitoxic agents, and a large amount of food. In short, he maxed out the quota. Anyway, it would be a waste if he didn't take the things in Blizzard City, and he would not suffer any loss if he took them. Others had to be careful with their calculations, fearing that carrying too many supplies would affect the battle. Zhang Yi was afraid that the quota was not enough. Just as he was collecting supplies, Bailey Chongqing suddenly came over. Captain Chaos, I want to talk to you. Bailey Chongqing glanced at the quartermaster next to him and said to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi glanced at Bailey Chongqing. About the missions? That's right. Why did you choose to act alone? And you didn't bring any of us with you? Bailey Chongqing's expression was a little ugly. After the Battle of Eclipse Moon, he and the other members of the team he never took on a decent mission again. If this continues, his people will be ruined. Zhang Yi said lightly, it is not convenient to tell you the content of the mission. Anyway, remember, I am doing this for your good.
He
was joking. He just thought it would be troublesome to bring these guys with him. Bailey Chongqing was stunned for a moment. His brows were slightly wrinkled, and his expression was a little hesitant. After a long time, he asked carefully, is it a very dangerous mission? Zhang Yi said, didn't you see who attended the meeting? The importance of this mission is beyond imagination. Even if you go, there will be great danger. Not to mention the other people in the team. Bailey Chongqing said with some confusion, but the other members of the investigation team seemed to have to participate in the operation. Zhang Yi said, but you should also know what kind of person I am. We are friends, right? Bailey Chongqing scratched his head. Yeah? Zhang Yi said with a smile, but if we really encounter danger, I probably won't be able to take care of you. You have very good professional ethics, but I am used to being a lone wolf. I'm not a border soldier, and I don't have a great spirit of sacrifice. So I suggest that you can be friends with me in private, and we can have a drink and chat together when we have nothing to do. But if you really go to the battlefield, don't be comrades in arms with people like me. He lightly punched Bailey Chongqing on the shoulder. Let's not talk about those things. Our friendship will not deteriorate. Bailey Chongqing touched his shoulder. Zhang Yi had already counted the supplies and left the quartermaster department. Only Bailey Chongqing was left there alone, feeling melancholy. Chapter 935 I Only Believe in Myself. Zhang Yi came to Blizzard City this time and behaved like a lone wolf. He did not express many opinions since the meeting. After the mission was over, he also quietly collected the supplies alone and returned to his residence to feed the cats and dogs. This attitude surprised many people. But thinking of Zhang Yi's previous experience at sea, everyone thought that he might not have come out of that experience, so they all felt that it was understandable. For this mission, the Jiangnan district was naturally very concerned, and all other aspects were fully prepared. I just won't go into details here. In short, in order to complete the search, the Deputy Minister of Operations Situ Xian was sent to lead the team, and 500 professional investigators were arranged to accompany him. That night, Zhu Zheng's office was still lit. He sat at his desk, supporting his chin with his hands crossed, and his tightly furrowed brows showed his state of mind at the moment. For this mission, he had great ambitions in his heart. However, it was actually extremely difficult to achieve his goal. The most critical point was that he did not have enough strong power in his hands. Of the 5 major investigation teams, the Night Crow squad has just been formed, and the Tengu squad has become a mess due to Zhang Yi's Buddhist attitude. If they really go to Qingdao, I'm afraid it will be difficult to form an effective combat force. The most critical thing is that they don't have a suitable leader to lead the team and support the entire team. Ding dong. The electronic sound prompt sounded. Zhu Shuai, the captain of the Night Crow squad, Jingwei, requests to see you. Hearing the word Jingwei, Zhu Zheng immediately said, "Let her in." Not long after, Jingwei, wearing a black combat uniform and with her eyes covered by a layer of black gauze, came to Zhu Zheng. Zhu Shuai. Her voice was cold, as if she was a machine without emotions. Zhu Zheng looked at Jingwei and said leisurely, "Have you seen him today?" Jingwei nodded. "Yes. I feel that he is very strong." Zhu Zheng also nodded. "Don't forget your mission. He is an absolute conservative. It is safest for you to follow him in this operation." But Zhu Zheng's eyes flashed with a faint light. "When necessary, you can use him. After all, things like the source of God are very important to the region." Jingwei raised his right hand to his temple. "Yes, Zhu Shuai. I know my mission very well." Zhang Yi returned to his residence in Blizzard City with a large amount of supplies. Hua and Lele were waiting for him here. After Zhang Yi returned home, the first thing he did was to prepare food for them. Both guys have a big appetite. Hua is okay. Before it transforms into a giant battle, it does not need much energy. But every time it participates in a battle, it will eat dozens of people's food. Not only Hua, in fact, Zhang Yi and Liang Yu and others are all the same. Nowadays, the energy consumed by superpowers is converted from food. The higher the level of the superhuman, the higher the energy required for dietary intake. Fortunately, Zhang Yi's space is sufficient. Otherwise, according to their current state, the food may not last for decades. If it were a wild alien, even if they had high talents, they would not dare to fight with others easily or could not get enough energy due to the lack of food. Fortunately, the supplies in the Jiangnan region were sufficient. They used special food production and processing methods to feed more and more people. It was no problem to feed aliens. That's why Zhang Yi took all the supplies every time he came to collect them. To put it in a joking way, every time an alien like Zhang Yi went out, the energy consumed might be no less than that of a large warship. Aliens have become a strategic weapon in the new era. They are expensive, but have a very high cost-effectiveness. Fortunately, aliens don't need much maintenance on weekdays. This is the only good news. Zhang Yi sat on the sofa, prepared a mountain of food and drinking water for them, and then sat on the sofa and took out a hamburger and Coke from the alien space to eat. His expression was very indifferent. This is very different from the busy units at all levels in Blizzard City. And all this is just because he knew one thing clearly at this time. That is, in the next trip to Qingdao, it is difficult for the district to help them. And it is unrealistic to rely on the main responsible party of this operation, the East China Sea District, to help them. He must rely on himself to get everything he wants. What's more, he sensed something wrong from Zhu Zheng's attitude. Not only because Zhu Zheng had forgotten his previous promise, but also because Zhu Zheng did not appoint him as the general person in charge of this operation. If we think about it in a conventional way, obviously, the strength of Jiangnan District is weaker than that of Columbia Navy and East China Sea District. Then the best way is to concentrate on doing big things. It is the best choice for him, who is the strongest in Jiangnan District, to lead the team and for the 5 investigation teams to act in unison. Zhu Zheng did not mention a word about this matter. This shows that Zhu Zheng is still on guard against Zhang Yi in his heart. This cannot be said to be a mistake. As the supreme commander of the region, he was backstabbed by his trusted subordinates just half a year ago. So Zhu Zheng does not want to see Zhang Yi's family dominate. It's just that I'm a little curious. Who can he rely on besides me now? Zhang Yi frowned while eating a hamburger, puzzled by this. Zhu Zheng needs a strong force as the basis of his power. And the people of other investigation teams basically have relevant power behind them in Blizzard City. If any party becomes bigger and stronger, Zhu Zheng will be uneasy. Because of this, Zhang Yi's existence is precious. Zhang Yi knew that unless a new alien appeared who was easier to control than him and had strength not inferior to his, Zhu Zheng's attitude would not change so quickly. Could it be that during the 5 months I was away, he discovered new seeds? That's very likely. Zhang Yi took a bite of the hamburger, his dark pupils flashing with a blazing light in the night. Soon, he raised the corners of his mouth. This is very reasonable. This is what a regional supreme commander should do. I won't trust anyone. I only believe in the power in my hands. Zhang Yi didn't feel any loss in his heart. He and Zhu Zheng were just using each other. Because Zhu Zheng could provide him with the greatest convenience in this position, he cooperated with Zhu Zheng's work. I'm just afraid that you've made a wrong calculation this time, Zhang Yi said lightly. Chapter 936. Gathering Troops. That night, Zhang Yi's residence welcomed a guest. Deng Shentong, the captain of the Heavenly God team. After not seeing him for many days, he looked a little older. His skin color was no longer the white of the nobles in the past, but had more pigmentation, and even sparse stubble on his chin could be seen. It can be seen that Zhang Yi did not stop practicing during the nearly half a year he was away from the Jiangnan region. The two of them exchanged a few pleasantries. One of the powerful organizations in the South District must know something. But Deng Shentong would not tell him directly about that kind of thing unless there was an exchange of interests. It's really troublesome and a headache. Zhang Yi rubbed his temples. But it's not that troublesome. As long as I become stronger. Strong enough to dissolve all unknown fears. Zhang Yi's eyes sparkled with a smile. He will definitely give everyone a big surprise on this trip to Qingdao. The next morning, Zhang Yi took Huahua and Lele to the Blizzard City subway station to gather. Along the way, seeing the two animals around Zhang Yi, the surrounding soldiers and aliens cast strange eyes. The other investigation teams were all ready to go, and everyone carried a large amount of weapons and strategic resources. And there was no one around Zhang Yi, only two animals. However, in the end of the world, cats and dogs are not as easy to see as usual. Even the families of aliens can hardly afford them. Therefore, when some female aliens saw Huahua and Lele, their eyes suddenly filled with love. Ling Hu Feishue saw this scene from afar. Although she still had a cold face, her eyes that occasionally glanced over here still betrayed her inner thoughts. Zhang Yi came to the front, as if no one was around. His team only had him, a cat and a dog, and it was very empty. The surrounding area was already full of people. Because this time it was not just a few large investigation teams that went there. Before the three armies move, food and grass must go first. To organize a large-scale battle mission, it is imperative to do a good job in logistics. There are hundreds of logistics personnel alone. Not to mention the scouts who need to serve as the advanced troops to enter the poisonous miasma area of Qingdao to open up the road. In short, the number of people dispatched by Blizzard City this time must be thousands. Zhu Zheng, the supreme commander of the Jiangnan district, delivered an important speech for this mission. In the speech, it was mentioned that the Jiangnan district and the East China Sea district have been brotherly war zones with harmonious relations since ancient times. This mission is carried out in the spirit of unity, mutual assistance, cooperation, and win-win. We are proactive and hardworking and strive to achieve the early restoration of a normal living environment in Huaxi State. Zhang Yi directly asked him why he came tonight. Does your Deng family have any special plans for this trip to Qingdao? Zhang Yi stared at Deng Shentong's eyes with a smile. Although he knew that Deng Shentong could not answer his question, he still wanted to test it. But unexpectedly, Deng Shentong answered directly. Of course. My goal this time is very clear, which is to obtain the source of God. Not only me. Everyone has the same goal. After all, in the end of the world, being strong is everything. Only the strong can have the right to speak. Zhang Yi nodded. Then why did you come to me? If that's the case, we should be competitors. Deng Shentong smiled. What you said seems to be right, and you should be the person in the entire Jiangnan region who I can regard as my most rival. But our real trouble does not come from within. Zhang Yi said lightly, you mean the East China Sea regions? Deng Shintong then said, even the Columbia Navy and many countries in the southeastern sea area. Such a large-scale operation is very likely to be discovered. There may be a big melee at that time. Deng Shintong sighed. Zhang Yi said, since you have decided to go, you should be mentally prepared. In the past 6 months, I think your mentality has become more mature. You are not afraid, right? Deng Shintong heard this and looked out the window. Of course I am afraid. I was not afraid before because I had no awe. But now, I have known the cruelty of the world. No matter how powerful a person is, he will be killed. He may even be killed for inexplicable reasons. Zhang Yi's heart moved slightly. If it were Deng Shintong back then, he would never say such words. It seems that he has undergone a great transformation in the past 6 months. So, what is your purpose in coming to me? Cooperations? Zhang Yi said with a smile. Deng Shintong shook his head. You are a very smart guy. I can't convince you. You don't even want to bring Bailey Chongqing, which means you plan to walk in the mission as a lone wolf. Zhang Yi, oh. Then you came here this time, not just to say hello to me? Deng Shintong touched his nose. At least I admit that you are very strong. If necessary, I hope we can join forces. Instead of being hostile to each other, Zhang Yi's heart slowly sank. Deng Shintong said it very clearly. In front of the source of God, there are no friends. The East China Sea region and the Jiangnan region will secretly calculate each other. Even if they are from the Jiangnan region investigation team, they will ignore the so-called comradeship for the opportunity to be promoted to Ypsilon. There is a sentence that Zhang Yi did not say to Deng Shintong. The so-called key to promotion to Ypsilon is not very meaningful to him. Because Zhang Yi, who has a supernatural power index of 9,800 points at this time, does not have this limit. Just killing more powerful aliens and absorbing the origin is enough. But it is true that the closer he gets to the 10,000 point level, the smaller the improvement brought by absorbing the Delta-level aliens. If he really wants to break through that limit, he may have to kill the opponent's powerful aliens. But this time, the mantis stalks the cicada, while the oriole waits behind. He will become Ypsilon in a way that others can't imagine. I hope so. I will not offend others unless they offend me, Zhang Yi said. Deng Shintong smiled and nodded. That's good. After he said that, he stood up. It's getting late, I should go. I have to meet other people later. The other people he was referring to were naturally the captains of other investigation teams. But just as he was about to turn around and leave, he suddenly stopped. By the way, there is something I hope you will pay attention to recently. Deng Shintong turned his head slightly, looked at Zhang Yi and said meaningfully. Recently, Blizzard City seems to have undergone some changes. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a gentle tone, yes, after all, I've been away for half a year. Half a year is enough time for many things and people to become different. Deng Shintong nodded and left Zhang Yi's house. However, his words made Zhang Yi more convinced that something big must have happened secretly in Blizzard City. Perhaps a big storm was brewing. This atmosphere was sensed on the first day he came back. As Jiang, one of the powerful organizations in the South District, must know something. But Deng Shintong would not tell him directly about that kind of thing unless there was an exchange of interests. It's really troublesome and a headache. Zhang Yi rubbed his temples. But it's not that troublesome. As long as I become stronger. Strong enough to dissolve all unknown fears. Zhang Yi's eyes sparkled with a smile. He will definitely give everyone a big surprise on this trip to Qingdao. The next morning, Zhang Yi took Huahua and Lele to the Blizzard City subway station to gather. Along the way, seeing the two animals around Zhang Yi, the surrounding soldiers and aliens cast strange eyes. The other investigation teams were all ready to go, and everyone carried a large amount of weapons and strategic resources. And there was no one around Zhang Yi, only two animals. However, in the end of the world, cats and dogs are not as easy to see as usual. Even the families of aliens can hardly afford them. Therefore, when some female aliens saw Huahua and Lele, their eyes suddenly filled with love. Ling Hu Feishues saw this scene from afar. Although she still had a cold face, her eyes that occasionally glanced over here still betrayed her inner thoughts. Zhang Yi came to the front as if no one was around. His team only had him, a cat and a dog, and it was very empty. The surrounding area was already full of people. Because this time, it was not just a few large investigation teams that went there. Before the three armies move, food and grass must go first. To organize a large-scale battle mission, it is imperative to do a good job in logistics. There are hundreds of logistics personnel alone. Not to mention the scouts who need to serve as the advanced troops to enter the poisonous miasma area of Qingdao to open up the road. In short, the number of people dispatched by Blizzard City this time must be thousands. Zhu Zheng, the supreme commander of the Jiangnan district, delivered an important speech for this mission. In the speech, it was mentioned that the Jiangnan district and the East China Sea district have been brotherly war zones with harmonious relations since ancient times. This mission is carried out in the spirit of unity, mutual assistance, cooperation, and win-win. We are proactive and hardworking and strive to achieve the early restoration of a normal living environment in Huaxi State. Dear viewers, this video ends here. More to come. Really appreciate your support. Thanks.